This video is about using LaTeX and biblatex to create citations and bibliographies. It corresponds to the second part of section 7.13 of the Applied Analog Electronics textbook. I'm going to illustrate the use of LaTeX and biblatex here with an example in Overleaf. So let's take a look at what we have here. The first thing is to notice over on the left-hand side there, we have got three different files. There's an appliedelectronics.bib, a bme51.bib, and an example.tex. The example.tex file is the source itself for the LaTeX. It's where you have the text that you're going to be showing the reader. The .bib files are bibliography entry files, and they contain the information about what sources you're going to cite. They don't format this for you. They tell you what the entries mean. They're semantic things. Let's take a look at a couple of them. So bme51.bib. It's only got two entries in it. One is the textbook, and the other one is documentation that's online for the Overleaf BibTeX use. Each one has got a type. One's a book, the other's online. They each have a name, an identifier that's got to be unique across all the bibliography files. And it should be something you can remember fairly well, at least well enough to be able to start typing them. Then there's a title, an author, and here for books that's easy. Sometimes for online sources it's hard to figure out an author. For the Overleaf documentation, I made a corporate author, Overleaf. In cases of datasheets and stuff like that, that's a standard thing to do. If you don't have an actually identified author, the company that produced it is the author. Sometimes there won't be any identifiable author, and then you have to leave that field out. But author is usually how we sort citations, so it's a really good idea to have an author for everything. Both of these have URLs. Now, online ones pretty much have to have URLs because that's the only way you can find them. For books, sometimes they'll have URLs, sometimes not, depending whether or not you can get at the book online. When you have a URL, you should always have a URL date. That is the date at which you accessed this URL and saw that it was valid. Sometimes people move things around, websites go away, and if you've got a broken URL, you don't know if it's just mistyped or if it used to be there and isn't there anymore. If you've got the URL date, sometimes you can do things like check the Internet Archive, also known as the Wayback Machine, to find out whether or not that site existed at that time. Now, the Internet Archive doesn't back up everything on the internet, but it backs up a lot. And so quite often you can find, oh, this is moved. This is what used to be there. You can get the information you need by going to the archive to get the old version, and sometimes by finding some text in it, you can do a search of the web to find out where it's moved to. So URL date is very important. Let's take a look at another bibliography file. This appliedelectronics.bib is a huge one. It's got every citation I used in the textbook, probably some others that I didn't use. And so let's look at another online citation. This is the sort of citation you'll see for a datasheet. There is, again, the name. Here I use the part number as the name. The author is, again, a corporate author. Notice that this time I put the entry in quotes rather than in braces. Though for some reason I did the URL here in braces. You can do either one, quotes or braces. I have the title, and I put an extra set of braces here around the part number there. That's because the entries in this database should be in headline capitals. If your bibliography style file calls for sentence capitals rather than headline capitals, then it'll do the lowering the cases automatically. And putting something in brace says, don't change the case of this, don't touch this, this is sacred. And that means that you won't get your part number here changed to lowercase. That's important for words like DNA and RNA, which should be always in uppercase. Again, I have the URL here I have a version. This particular data sheet had a version number. If you've got that information, include it in the database. I had a date on the data sheet. That was when it was created, printed, whatever. And I have a URL date, which is when I found it at this location on the web. It may not be there anymore. It better be, because otherwise there's a bad link in the textbook. But this URL date says when I saw it there. And notice it's not the same thing as the date. The date is when it was created. The URL date is when I found it on the web, when I saw that this URL was okay. Okay, how do I cite these things? Well, let's go over to example.tech. We looked at the use package stuff. There's a whole bunch of options here for biblatex that don't really matter very much. You can probably use the defaults for just about everything here. Some of these are the defaults. If you just want to use, these are the ones that I copied from the example template that I put up for students to use. If you use these, they're fine. There's one other one that I used in the book that's kind of fun, and that is I did backref equals true, which means that there's a backwards reference, a link from the citation back to where it was cited. And that's very useful if you are doing something like a big textbook and you want to say, check this citation. You go to the end and now your PDF reader may not let you go back to where you were. The backlink on the citation itself makes it very easy to jump back and forth, so you can check citations easily in the textbook without losing your place. Okay, and we've got add bib resource, which says where the bibliography database is. And notice I've got two files here. I just added each of them. Okay. When I want to actually do a citation, I just do \cite and then the name of the citation. And case matters. So, for instance, this LaTeX here. If I tried typing that, notice it does completion here, and I can say, oh, this is the one I wanted, the LA, and it gets the capitalization right. If I started doing it with lowercase, it still finds that correctly capitalized one. And it's good to do this clicking on that one to get the capitalization stuff right, because if you get the capitalization wrong, biblatex will fail to find case matters in the IDs of the citations. That may have been a poor choice for them to have made, but they did make it, and you have to live with it. Completion is very useful for things like part numbers. So I can never remember the part number for this phototransistor, and if I just start, well, it started with WP. There, I found it. So that makes things a lot easier. I generally put citations inside a sentence. Sometimes you can put them after a sentence. And think a little bit about what you're citing. If it's something that's just part of the sentence that's being cited, you definitely want it inside. And notice here I've put them both right after the thing that was being cited. Or sometimes you gather them together at the end of a sentence. And if it's for a bigger chunk of stuff, then putting it outside the sentence may be better. I've also put a tilde before the \cite. That's saying put an unbreakable space here. Don't let the citation move to a new line, or even worse, a new page. Make sure it stays with the thing that's being cited. Okay, so let's take a look at how we produce the bibliography. You just say \print bibliography where you want your references to appear. All right, now if we compile this and take a look at the output, okay, we'll see that the citations are in the square bracket file, square bracket style. That's because these are numeric citations. In fact, I believe I said numeric-COMP for the cite style, and what that means is that if I've got a whole bunch of them, it'll compress it into a range. So instead of saying 2, 3, 4, 5, it says 2-5. And that was 4 different citations there. So I like that style because it's compact without being confusing. And notice that there's only 5 citations here, and there's only 5 citations on the references. I can scroll that up a little bit so you can see there's only the 5. Even though the textbook was in the BME51.bib, there were hundreds more citations in appliedelectronics.bib. they're not included in the reference list because I didn't cite them. The reference list should contain everything that you cite and exactly those things that you cite, nothing else. You don't want to pad your reference list with things you didn't cite. So that's one of the advantages of using LaTeX and biblatex to do your reference lists, is that it gets it right. It only cites those things that you actually used. It sorts them in the order that you specified. Here it was author's name, then title, then year. So King-Bright phototransistor, Lamport LaTeX, Layman biblatex, or the biblatex, I don't remember whether the is included in the ordering or not. Overleaf appears twice, but bibliography management comes before documentation because that's the alphabetical order for the titles. So it sorts everything for you, picks out just the ones you need, it formats them for you, it even makes the links be active. So it's a really useful tool to get your reference lists right. And all you have to do is make sure that you get all the correct information into your .bib file. If the information is not there, LaTeX and biblatex can't make it up for you. Okay, let's show one example, one more thing on the example. Let's go back to the input, and let's say I want to comment out this line. I didn't really want to talk about the phototransistor here. If I comment that out, recompile it, and go back to look at the output, it's still compiling. There. Finish the recompile. Notice that that citation went away, so I'm no longer citing phototransistor here. All the references got renumbered because now it's 1 through 4 instead of 2 through 5 for the ones I'm using, and all the citations to them got updated. You want to do this. You never want to do this stuff manually because it's almost impossible to keep the stuff consistent if you're doing it manually and going through edits. All I did was take out one sentence there, and it changed every citation in the document. That happens all the time. It happens with figures and tables also. Those are also ones you want to make sure that LaTeX is doing all the cross-references for you, because you'll never remember to update every figure number manually. And you shouldn't have to. That's the sort of thing computers are good at and people aren't. So let the computer do it for you. Okay, there are many other types of entries you can have in your bibliography file, in your .bib file, and it's all documented in the biblatex documentation, which I've cited here for you. And I suggest don't try and read the entire biblatex package. It is huge. 99% of it is stuff you never need to know. But take a look at the list of what the different types of entries are and what the fields are for those entries, so that you can go, oh, this should be online, this should be a book, this should be an article, this should be a tech report. There's a lot of different types of entries you can have, and picking the right one means that the bibliography style file has an easier time formatting it correctly. And that's probably about it. Have fun using biblatex.